All right, so we are back. I am back home in my setup. It has been about a week and a half. We have a lot to talk about. There's so many things that we need to catch up on. One of them is the fact that we all know exactly what Jake Paul versus Mike Tyson is. By the time you're seeing this video, my podcast with my dad is out, I think, and I hope you guys really enjoyed that. But even then, and earlier this week when I was in Orlando, I didn't know what this fight was going to be. You heard rumors online. You didn't really know. I even talked to some of the people in VP. They weren't giving up the gab. They were waiting until they got this big announcement, and it has now come out. So let's go over it. Jake Paul versus Mike Tyson is an official sanctioned pro fight. And I thought I knew exactly what that meant. Turns out I actually don't. Here's why. The breakdown. Let's go. Here's the official announcement from the Most Valuable Promotions Twitter. Paul versus Tyson is officially a sanctioned professional heavyweight bout. Who puts another W in their record on Saturday, July 20th, and then they have the promo for the fight. This is pretty fucking crazy because now you're having a potential win or loss on the illustrious Mike Tyson's boxing record by way of a fight with Jake Paul. That in its own right is insane to think about because honestly, if I'm being dead honest, I thought this was going to be an exhibition. I didn't know that a commission would be able to actually clear this as a sanctioned fight. We saw Logan and Floyd Mayweather in Florida. That wasn't able to be sanctioned as a legitimate pro bout. I think one, that was also because of the weight, because Logan was 50 pounds bigger than Floyd. Obviously, you weren't going to get anywhere close, so you couldn't sanction that. We also seen other unsanctioned bouts, Vitor Belfort and Evander Holyfield, and some other things like that in the crossover boxing space, whatever you want to call this thing that we're still doing in 2024. This one flips that narrative. And one thing that Jake has always said is that he would fight Floyd Mayweather, he would fight Canelo, he would fight all these guys, and now Mike Tyson under a pro sanctioning. He doesn't want to do exhibitions, he wants to do pro matches. Well, seems like he's getting his wish. Again, I don't really know what to think about it. It doesn't feel real. But it seems like he's getting his wish. And it's just, it's odd to think about that Mike Tyson is going to have Jake Paul on his record, win or lose. And I do definitely think it's going to be a loss, which is even crazier. But let's take a look at the official article because Most Valuable Promotions put out the tweet, and then Jake linked to the article written by Andreas Hale at ESPN. This was written yesterday morning. The July 20th bout between YouTuber turned prize fighter Jake Paul and former heavyweight boxing champion Mike Tyson will be classified as a sanctioned professional fight by the Texas Department of Licensing and Regulations. So the Texas Department of Licensing and Regulations is their state athletic commission. So this is all legit. This is an actual pro match. But then what we read after this is, I would say, even more so interesting than this being a pro bout, which is wild in its own right. The heavyweight showdown will be contested over 8 2-minute rounds, with each fighter using 14-ounce gloves. The outcome will affect their professional boxing records. So obviously the three things that jump out. One, they are doing 8 rounds, but they are 2-minute rounds. So essentially you are doing 8 less minutes. Instead of the 24 you would usually do over 8 rounds, you're only doing 16 minutes. Obviously that is because of Mike Tyson's age and ability to box for long periods of time, which, yeah, you kind of figured something like this had to be the case, him being 57, 58. I don't think he was going to be able to do high-level activities for 3-minute rounds over a long period of time. The 14-ounce gloves, by the way, shout out Papa Plim, who just essentially called that 14 ounces. It was rumored, but I don't know where the f he found it. That is interesting for a couple of reasons. One, I would assume it's meant to protect Mike, again, because of the age, of the time out of the ring, of the amount of times he's been hit and potential damage that can occur in a fight like this with a younger guy like Jake. It doesn't make any sense to put Jake in 14-ounce gloves out of nowhere. This is clearly all because Mike is 57 years old. And the whole thing that you're looking at is essentially what would be considered exhibition rules under a professional sanctioning, which is something I don't think I've seen much. I'm sure it's happened, but I don't think I've seen, at least recently, especially with the 2-minute round. I mean, that's essentially women's boxing rule set with the 2 minutes. And by the way, I'm not upset at that. Like 14 ounces, 2 minutes, that's without putting headgear on Mike and lowering the rounds to 4, which is something that I just, you put yourself in a position with Netflix and making this a pro bout, you just can't do. You can't have this be some sort of like gimmick move around because of what Jake said he wants to do, which is only fighting these pro bouts. And another thing he also said he wants to do is knock Mike Tyson out. So you couldn't really gimmick this, at least not in a way that made it look like it was going to be some big show and dance. This has to be a fight, and this is kind of the messaging Mike Tyson said when he went on that Fox News show and was like, it'll be different rules, but this will still be a fight. So I'm not mad at them putting heavier gloves on and going less time. That's probably going to get the best of what you can get out of Mike for the amount of time it does go on. Again, I don't think this is going to be a decision. I think Jake will stop Mike. Now let's talk about the quote here. It says, Mike Tyson and Jake signed on to fight each other with a desire to do so in a sanctioned professional bout that would have had a definitive outcome. Most Viable Promotions co-founder Nakisa Badarian said in a statement to ESPN, quote, over the past 6 weeks, MVP has worked with its partners to satisfy the requirements of the Texas Department of Licensing and Regulation to sanction Paul versus Tyson, and we are grateful that we've gotten to this point since the announcement of this fight, which will be taking place at AT&T Stadium in Arlington, Texas, and will be streamed on Netflix. There were questions surrounding the rules and the 3-decade age difference. That is a wild thing to put in context. All right, so what do I think about all this? One, making it a professional boxing match is, there's something about it that just doesn't sit right with a lot of boxing fans because, again, Mike is 50-6, and we remember those professional wins and losses being during a time where he was still young and meant to be at the top of the heavyweight scene. And clearly, this is not the same Mike. We know this. I've said this, which is why I think Jake will stop Mike in this fight. Outside of Mike being able to put on an otherworldly performance here, and maybe that's the case. Maybe I'm underestimating a bit of the old school, that old school, son. So, yeah, I don't know, man. I don't see it going Mike's way here. I know that the 14-ounce gloves are put in place to diffuse a bit of the explosive power from both guys, but obviously, clearly, mostly from Jake. I don't know that it's going to matter, though, because, again, talked about it in the last video. We covered this. Jake is bulked up to 230 pounds. These shorter rounds, you would think, are going to benefit Mike not having to go as long. And, again, been out of the game for a while, but it also will benefit Jake, who is, again, coming up in weight. And by the way, you guys are thinking that Jake is coming up 30 pounds, which in fighting weight, yes, is true, but Jake does walk around bigger than 200 pounds. He is about 210, 215, but now is getting bigger and bigger. So this will benefit him too, right? Carrying weight that you haven't necessarily had or had to fight at is going to be a problem to do for an elongated period. So shorter rounds mean Jake gets to be more explosive in a shorter period of time and throw big-time punches continuous. So that's another reason, outside of, again, the first few rounds where Jake may be a bit tentative, and let's just see what Mike still has left. Outside of that, I do think Jake can start to overwhelm Mike late into the fight and then eventually land the knockout blow. And make no mistake about it, I've said this once, I'll say it a million times, that is what this is meant to do. Jake is wanting to take Mike's legacy. It's clear. You might not like that as a boxing fan, and I get the reasons why. Mike is not what he used to be, and a loss on his record now won't equal what it equaled in 1990, whatever, but it still will be on his record, and it will make Jake Paul the most hated man in boxing, and make no mistake about it, that is the plan. So yeah, you better get ready, because apparently this thing is real. Again, it's a pro-sanctioned bout under the specific, almost exhibition-like glove size and round time, which, again, I'm okay with. The pro side of it, it is what it is. I think personally, I don't look at fighters that fight past their prime and remember them for what they were past their prime, but that's just me. I don't know if you guys do that. Like, I look at Anderson Silva for the greatest fighter that's ever lived. Even when Jake beat him, that didn't diminish, to me, him being one of the greatest martial artists ever. Because Anderson at that age wasn't Anderson 15 years before that, or 20 years, or whatever it was. And just, name the fighter that's happened to, where they fought a little too long past their expiration date and they weren't the fighter they were in their prime. I don't look at it that way, but that isn't the only complaint. Obviously, people are worried about Mike Tyson's health. And Texas as a commission is pretty well respected, so I expect them to do all of their due diligence before these two step into the ring. But man, I have to say, I am surprised. I'm shocked that Mike Tyson and Jake Paul is a pro-sanctioned bout, but I'm not shocked at the round time or the size gloves that they have on, because this is very similar to Tyson versus Roy Jones, and they're keeping with that same thing, but apparently this one's going on your record, and you could see potentially a Jake Paul win versus Mike Tyson, or Mike Tyson ending out his career by once and for all beating Jake the Problem Child. What happens in this fight? I believe I have the answer. I do think Jake is going to make a statement here, but I don't have all the answers. What do you guys think of the rule set, the glove size, the round times, the fact that this is a pro bout? I don't have any of those answers. I never do. But on July 20th in AT&T Stadium in Arlington, Texas, guess we'll find out.